the tangent ratio compares which two sides of a triangle?
Opposite.
Excellent. It's the opposite side over the adjacent side. Okay. At the top of your note packet, in the margin, I want you to write the tangent ratio for angle A in this picture and the tangent ratio for angle B in this picture. You don't have this picture on your notes. So just at the top somewhere, write tangent A equals and tangent B equals and write the ratios for those two. The tangent ratio for A and the tangent ratio for B. You don't have that picture, so you have to look up here to figure them out. Grant, tangent of A, bless you, what'd you come up with?
4/3.
4/3. Pencil, the tangent of B, what'd you come up with? Good, it would be 3/4 then. Make sure you simplify. If you had 24/18 for A, you're on the right start, but make sure you always simplify them. The tangents, they end up being what of each other? Reciprocals. Okay? Alright. To the new stuff. Sine, spelled S-I-N-E, but we abbreviate it with the word sin. Okay, on your calculator you'll see the word sin. Defined as the ratio of the opposite side of an angle to the hypotenuse. So we're going to be using the hypotenuse today. So on your notes you have this little thing to fill in. Sine of an angle is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Find that sine of an angle opposite over hypotenuse. Right there where it says sine of A, just write opposite over hypotenuse. Then your cosine is defined as the ratio, so the fraction, that compares the adjacent side to the hypotenuse. So over on the right side it says like cosine of A equals. The cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. I'm going to give you an acronym to remember this. Bubble letters rock. The acronym is pronounced SOHCAHTOA.
Oh.
SOHCAHTOA. Okay? If it's not in bubble letters, it looks like this. No. Out of like the 7 years I've taught this, your class and the last class are the only ones that ever went too far with that. Okay. SOHCAHTOA. Ready? This is how it works. The so part helps you remember sine. Sine, which starts with S, is equal to the opposite, which starts with O, over the hypotenuse, which starts with H.
I see where that
I
is.
see this.
Helps you remember cosine, because cosine starts with C. A is adjacent over H, which is the hypotenuse. And then the TOA is what we did yesterday, the tangent. The tangent is the opposite side over the adjacent side. Do you see how it works?
Sure.
Okay, make sure you wrote that down on your note packet, SOHCAHTOA. So that way you have it spelled correctly. Maybe put it at the top or in that little blank space off to the right. If you can't spell it correctly, it's not going to help you to know it then. Okay, so make sure you spell it correctly. Here we go to the first one. Using this right triangle, we want to find or write the ratios for the sine of t, the cosine of t, the sine of g, and the cosine of g. Okay, so we're writing fractions here. We're writing the ratio for the sine of t and the ratio for the cosine of t, the ratio for the sine of g, and the cosine of g. See now why you have to put sine or cosine or tangent in front of each little letter? Well, so you know which one you're talking about. If you just wrote t equals, I wouldn't know what you're talking about. So use SOHCAHTOA and figure out your ratios in simplest form. Anna, did you get the sine of t in those terms?
12 or 20
3 over 5. Good. Did you get your cosine of t? Did you get the sine of g? Cosine of g? Okay, go do cosine of t. Barbie. Sine of g. Oh, you are? Okay, I'll give you a minute. Sorry. Did you get your cosine, Anna? Try again. Did you get them, Barbie? What did you get for your sine of g? 4/5. How about your cosine of g? Good. Did you cosine? Okay. What's cosine? What would we write for our short version? Good. So angle T, which side is adjacent? 16, 12, or 20? 16. What's your hypotenuse? Reduced by 4? What do you come up with? Excellent. 4 over 5. Those are your correct answers. Shortcut. Instead of reducing 4 times, reduce once. If all you have to do is write the ratios, then go to your triangle and look at its side lengths, 12, 16, and 20. Can these 3 numbers be reduced by the same value? Yeah, by what? So if I reduce 12 by 4, it becomes, and 16 becomes, and 20 becomes, okay, now you just reduced them all. So then you don't have to reduce 4 times, you would just use the 3, 4, and 5 to write your ratios. Does that make sense? Okay, that's a shortcut, you don't have to do it that way, but you can if you want to. Alright, using your trig functions to find the height of tall objects. It says that a 20-foot wire supporting a flagpole forms a 35-degree angle with the flagpole. To the nearest foot, how high is the flagpole? If I want to know the flagpole's height, am I looking for this horizontal distance or the vertical? Vertical. Okay, so let's call that x. In reference to the 35-degree angle, Riley, how would you classify x? Would you call it the opposite, the adjacent, or the hypotenuse? Good. How about 20, Riley? Excellent. So on the top of your paper, you have it written down, SOHCAHTOA. If I'm given adjacent and hypotenuse, which trig function will we use? Cosine. No, the one that starts with a C. So we're going to say the cosine of our angle measure, 35 degrees, equals the adjacent, because A comes first, over the hypotenuse, 20. Now this should look really similar to yesterday, only instead of tangent we have cosine. So we're still trying to get x by itself. How do I move my 20 over? Multiply both sides by 20. So then we have 20 times the cosine of 35 equal to x. Is x all alone now? Okay, now you can use your calculator. And you do 20 times cosine 35. Your cosine button should be really close to your tangent button on there. To the nearest foot implies we're rounding how? To a whole number. So when you put that in the calculator, what do we get to the nearest whole number? 16 feet. There's a label. Make sure you try and get it on there. The height of the pole is about 16 feet. If you're not getting that, please let me know. We might need to change your mode on your calculator. Yeah, I'll take the silence as a good thing. Number 3. A right triangle has a leg length of 1.5 units and a hypotenuse of 4 units. Find the measures of its acute angles to the nearest degree. So they want us to find the measure of angle A and B in this picture. Pick one to start with. Who do you want to find first? I don't care. We'll do A because it's alphabetical order. So in reference to A, 1.5. Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Adjacent. In reference to A, 1.5 is the adjacent leg. How about 4? What would that be? The hypotenuse. Caden, according to SOHCAHTOA, which trig function would we use? What's that stand for? Good. So then we'll say the cosine of angle A. We don't have an angle measurement to put in like we did on number 2. We actually wrote cosine 35. But here I'm trying to find angle A. So the cosine of A equals 1.5 over 4. When you want to find an angle measure, do we use the regular button or the inverse? Inverse. What you want to put in the calculator is cosine inverse of 1.5 over 4. So most of you will do second cosine 1.5 divided by 4. To the nearest degree is telling us to round where? The whole number. What do we get to the whole number for angle A? 68. You should get that. If you don't, make sure you know what you're doing. Okay, you guys, don't overwork yourself here. It's a triangle, and they want us to find the 3 angles. What do you know about them? They have to add up to 180, right? So you don't have to use a trig function to find B. You know these 2 angles, subtract them from 180. That'd be 158, 68 plus 90. So then I'm going to subtract that from 180, and we should get the measure of angle B to be about 22 degrees. If you use the trig function, you would want to use the sine of B, and you should come up with the same value of 22. Questions on the front side? Killer, flip it over. I'll give you a couple minutes to do number 4 here. They want you to write the sine and cosine ratios for x and y. So the sine of x equals, the cosine of x equals, the sine of y equals, and the cosine of y equals. Bless you. You're just writing the ratios, so you really don't need your calculator unless you need help reducing. You won't be punching in sine and cosine at all. shortcut thing. I know these all are divisible by 8 when I look at them. That gives me 6, 8, 10. Can I reduce 6, 8, and 10 even further? Yeah, by what? 2. So then I get 3, 4, and 5. And I can't reduce those. So those are the values that you should end with your fractions. And even if you didn't reduce first. Your sine of x, Peyton. The sine of x would be what?
That would be 4/3.
No, that'd be your tangent of x.
Oh.
SOHCAHTOA, what's your sine? What over what?
Oh, 4/5.
There you go. Sine would be 4/5. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Peyton, what's the cosine of x?
3/5.
Good. Pop, what'd you get for the sine of y?
3/5,
How about the cosine of y, Pop?
4/5.
Excellent. This is what you should have for your 4 answers. Part B, how is the sine of x related to the cosine of y? My top and bottom ones. Well, the exact same thing, aren't they? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Number 5. Your worksheets next week. Some of them will have the pictures started for you, like your notes have been. Some of them you're gonna have to draw the pictures yourself, kind of like what you did on your quiz. So if you're having troubles drawing those pictures, make sure you come in for extra help to draw the right triangle pictures. But on this one, we started it for you. A 20-foot wire supporting a flagpole forms a 50-degree angle with the ground. What is the height of the flagpole to the nearest foot? So again, we're looking for height. So would that be my horizontal or my vertical? Vertical. So you want to put your X on that vertical line. Then label the triangle based off your angle measure given. Colon, reference to 50. X, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse.
Opposite.
How about 20?
Opposite.
Okay, so which trig function of pole should we use?
Is it
Yes, sorry. Sine of 50 would equal x over 20. Labs, what would you have to punch into your calculator to figure out what x is?
sine 50 times 20?
Cool. Did you do it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Do 20 times sine 50.
15.3.
Good. So to your nearest foot?
15.
Excellent. Should get about 15 feet for the height of your flagpole there. Read carefully. Try and remember your labels. Do number 6. Find the value of x in each of those. Round your answer to the nearest degree. So is x representing an angle or a side?
Angle.
An angle. So are you going to use your regular button or your inverse button? Inverse. Team must have been at the end of 6th period, so they weren't eating at basically 2 o'clock. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's what that was. Don't use the fractions, we gotta use division. They could have. Here, what are they? Taylor, on part A, in reference to angle X, would 6.5 be opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? How about 10? So So SOHCAHTOA Taylor tells us to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Sine. So you should have the sine of x equals 6.5 over 10. When you want to try and find the angle measure, you're going to use your inverse. So the sine inverse of 6.5 over 10 equals x. To the nearest degree, Taylor, what did you come up with? Did you say 41? Good. You should have 41 degrees there. Julia on B. In reference to x, how would you label 10? How about 27? Okay. I mean, it would be adjacent, but hypotenuse is better fit. So which trig function do we want to use, Julia? So the cosine of x equals what over what? 10 over 27. Good. You want to find an angle measure, use your inverse. So you're going to do the cosine inverse of 10 over 27, and then take that one to the nearest degree. What'd you get? 68. Oops. Questions on the inverse ones? If you're getting a domain error on the inverse ones, don't use your fraction button, use the division button. Some calculators don't like when you use your fraction button. Cool. Try 7. Find x and y to the nearest 10. You guys know who Riley Odie is? I asked him how he was related to Sterling last period. They're twins. Because their birthdays were in the announcement. So they had birthdays on the same day. I just thought maybe they were cousins with birthdays on the same day. And all the Rasmussens and Odies, they're all like, yeah.
It's a little weird.
It is weird. What?
I didn't know they were kind of the end of middle school.
Oh, perfect. And they're in your grade.
Yeah, they're in my grade.
Okay.
But now I know.
Ruth and Marco, you got picked to come up and solve x and y, so whoever goes first gets first choice.
Run.
Oh, Marco didn't take it.
Nice leisurely walk up.
I like watching students write on the smartphone. Because they just like, doesn't look natural to them. Yeah. What are you doing?
I wrote it too far over.
Oh, well, you could have left that left side for Ruth.
Moving the bottom.
Oh, well, that's nice. Put her on the bottom then. She could have been equal and it could have been side by side. I feel like that's way more work than you showed on your paper. You show all that on your paper?
No.
Alright. Good job. That's all you have to do. That's all I expect. So you get Y since you got X. As she's working on this, What would the other acute angle be? If that one's 57, what should the other one be then? 33, right? Okay. So will Ruth's answer be smaller or bigger than Marceau's? It should be smaller, right? Because that's going to be across from the smaller acute angle. You guys did really good at showing your work. Impressed. Good job. Good job with rounding too. Proud of you too. Questions at all? Okay, we're not gonna have enough time to finish the last one, but I think you guys are okay. Here's your assignment for the weekend.
What time do we get out of here?
52 today.
Yay! Out of math early.
We should have left here. Oh yeah, we are. Wait, no.
Not like
We should have been out of here.